Hey, John Harris here with the Rock Metal Podcast. Join me as we get to go behind the scenes into what goes into producing records and making music as we interview some of our favorite and soon-to-be favorite bands. Today we're chatting with Roni MacRuairi of Words That Burn for fans of Parkway Drive, Bring to the Horizon, and Architects. We'll be chatting about Words That Burn's new album, Cutthroat Culture, produced, mixed, and mastered by Josh Shroeder. We'll get to hear the story about how all of that came to be, what Roni learned working with the legendary producer, and so much more. So please stay tuned to the very end. But first, let's check in with our beautiful sponsors. Asher Media Relations, doing public relations for everything loud. For your band needs to be seen and heard in print, online, and radio, head over to AsherMediaRelations.com. That's AsherMediaRelations.com. Mention the Rock Metal Podcast and get your band noticed. Syndicol Music is a full-service agency for musicians offering record label services, marketing, branding, production, and management. Head over to syndicolmusic.com. That's syndicolmusic.com. SYNDICOL music.com. Mention the Rock Metal Podcast and take your music career to the next level. Roni, thank you so much for coming on. Go and say hi to all of our beautiful listeners.
Hi, everybody.
All right, great to have you on. Hopefully we can throw out some words that burn today. And
Awesome.
Yeah, and this Cutthroat Culture, baby. All right, let's talk about this record, Cutthroat Culture. What was the greatest moment for you producing this record?
I think having it finished was probably one of the pinnacle kind of moments. Took a long while to get it done. We recorded it primarily throughout COVID, so we were kind of recording our parts remotely and then kind of putting it all together, kind of in our guitar studio. But the biggest thing was securing Josh Schroeder as producer. That was absolutely amazing because he's done some of our favorite bands. Like he's Lorna being like the biggest one, like King 810, our buddies from Detroit and of Virtue. So having him on board was absolutely just icing on the cake. Really was.
Very cool. Let's talk about that. Follow-up question is... Actually, another follow-up question. We'll probably touch base with having Josh Schroeder as a producer because that's obviously a big one for you, and I can tell it means a lot for you and for the band.
Yeah.
But working primarily during COVID, getting things done remotely, then putting it together in the guitarist studio, how did that all work? Was it challenging? Was it rewarding? Is it something that you'll do again in the future? How did it all work?
Luckily enough, we all have our own little kind of like studios in our houses, just for, primarily for just demoing ideas and so on. But when the kind of the isolation and all that kind of came in, like we knew we wanted to do this album anyway, but it was just bad timing, So Shane, our guitar player who has our main studio in his house, he just worked on a lot of kind of ideas musically and would bounce them over to myself, and then I kind of work on the vocals, or at least the vocal ideas, like the patterns and so on, and then we kind of bounce back and forth like until we thought the song was at least structurally solid, and then we'd have Jay on bass and Jason do his drum thing as well. So like it was actually quite interesting to do that because sometimes when you're on your own you can kind of just like there's no noise, so you can kind of like really kind of get stuck into your ideas and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if there's four people in the room and they're all kind of shouting ideas, sometimes something's going to get kind of muddled, So from that point of view, it worked out quite well because I think it's probably our most solid, or definitely our most solid album to date. So, there's definitely something to be said for it. And we took a lot of time doing it as well. I think with the last album, we kind of had it done, kind of, 6 months from inception to finished, whereas this was a year longer. So it's like we've started throwing ideas around for the next EP or next album, and we're kind of doing it this way as well. So it obviously works.
Yeah. We might even touch base on that one again, but working independently has its advantages and remotely to that sense, and throwing out some ideas for the next EP or album, and potentially even working the same way, even though you don't have to. But that's one of the cool things, the blessing in disguise, I guess you could say, of the situation.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I'm not just talking about from my own point of view. I'm talking about like from Shane's point of view, from Jerry's point of view, like when he's putting his bass parts to a song, like, it's kind of like you can just really get stuck into it, and try out like multiple different ideas for different sections or whatever, rather than kind of someone sitting beside him going, "This is the riff," So he'll kind of like he'll just get into it, like, maybe try to harmonize along with Shane's guitar instead of just playing the same, So it's really, really good to kind of like spend hours and hours on your own, just kind of getting into a mindset or a headspace that's your own.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the biggest challenge for you on this record?
I suppose the polar opposite of that was we couldn't get into a room together. you know, so it's really good to get kind of have an idea and then go into the band room and jam it out, just in the practice room and just jam it. And sometimes there might be just one little nugget of gold there that you could potentially become a song. Whereas when you're isolated away from each other, you don't have that little kind of magic spot, that little kind of, you can't be around each other. So that was probably the most difficult thing from a recording point of view, is that we didn't get to kind of just trash out the bits. Now, in saying that, the back and forth between, say, myself and Shane in terms of structuring the songs, like for each song, that could have taken months. So we didn't just kind of like settle and stuff. We tried out loads of different ideas, kind of like in terms of verse lengths, chorus lengths, kind of middle parts, intros, and all, just to kind of see what worked, and then let it breathe for maybe a month and then come back to see if it still kind of sounded that good.
Yeah. Something you mentioned was letting things breathe, for a month or so. Would you say that was another sort of benefit to having that much time to work on the record, was that you could come back to certain things and go, ooh, you know what, maybe that wasn't the best idea, but it could have been released already if it had been, say, a normal situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it was a lesson that we kind of, that we can definitely take away from that process, is that just to let the songs breathe. Because when you hear something new, you get excited about it, and then, you, like, as you said, like 6 months down the road, it could be released. Whereas with this, like, we probably went through 2 or 3, 4 or 5 different variations of the same song over the course of a year, just to kind of make sure we had it right. Like, I mean, just to make sure when we came back to it after not listening for a month or so, that it was still exciting. And I think that's that's exciting to us. Like, I mean, that we were still kind of, we were still kind of really kind of buzzed about like the song and how it felt and how it sounded. And that's even before we sent it over to Josh. We wanted to make sure that the songs were as good as they could be from to the best of our capabilities before we sent them over to Josh, because we knew that he was going to get into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something very important there. Everything is exciting when it's new. Everything is exciting when it's loud. But take a few days, a few weeks, even it sounds like a longer time, come back to it, listen to it at a normal, regular volume. Does it still excite the crap out of you? Because you're the one who's got to play it. And then sending it off to the producer. And it sounds like Josh was incredibly supportive. Wasn't one of those producers where you send it off, you're super excited, and he's like, yeah? Is that?
I probably would have cried if that had happened. Like he did have notes for each song. He gave us a lot of guidance going forward as well. So like it was such a good experience to work with someone who is at the top of their game, really. And for 4 boys from a small town in the east of Ireland, like, I mean, it's a very, very big deal for us to have somebody who's that well renowned, who's just like such a good songwriter as well, because like I know that he writes songs with bands like King A10, and I think he might have, don't quote me on this, kind of got stuck into the songwriting with Lorna as well. But just to have his wisdom was just absolutely amazing, because normally we'd be kind of like, this is the song, that's it. And then when you have somebody kind of saying, well, maybe this or maybe that, or like, in the music, you might have like taken some of the, let's say, synths up, or brought some down, or taken them out completely, or added something new in, stuff that we wouldn't have imagined doing, like, because you're still sometimes you're just too close.
Yeah.
to the song. Like, I mean, so like, what he brought to fundamentally to the table was he gave the song each song its own identity, and like its own kind of this new feel that like that we just, as I said, we just probably couldn't see because we were just so close to the demo, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a funny, funny way. It's too close to the song. Something else that comes to mind is now that he has the experience of watching Lorna Shore explode, Butcher Babies explode, King 810 explode, Tala explode. He's watched these bands explode, and he knows the formula. He knows the recipe. It's just like going into the kitchen. You're not gonna, oh, how do I make a cake today? Like, no, you're gonna follow the rules so that you get a cake out of the freaking oven.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, he's got, as you said, that wisdom to look at something and say, actually, structurally, it would make more sense and sell more records if you did it this way, or whatever the case might be, or it might hit harder if you do it this way. I mean, I know making money is not important to you at all, right?
Yeah. Sure. What's the rock and roll answer to that question? No, we're not in it. But no, like, I mean, it's great. It's great, like, to see your album sell. It's great to see people kind of listen to it on social media. It's great to see people giving you kudos for your 2 years of hard work, but you don't go into it with that attitude.
Okay.
I think that would kind of just get in the way. I think because then you're writing for the wrong reason, I think.
Sure. Okay, let's chat about themes on this record. I didn't get anything from Blood Blast or Believe as far as what kind of themes, lyrically went into the record, and I believe I'm chatting with the right guy. What's going into this record? Is this a pandemic record, or is it something different than that?
I think it's probably the most. I had a feeling you were going to ask this, actually. It's probably the most observational album lyrically that we've done. There's only probably one song that's personal, and the rest is just kind of watching the world go by kind of thing. When I say watching the world go by, I mean, like, during the pandemic, I think a lot of people spent more time on their phones. I know I did, like, and, you kind of just see how things change and people interact with each other and, kind of like information you're given, information you're receiving, information you're absorbing, and how you kind of react and respond to that, or how different people react and respond to that. And it's kind of, it's not really choosing any sides. It's just kind of like how I felt on any particular day. That's kind of, so if I was writing Den of Lions, for example, if I was doing the lyrics for that, if I felt really kind of pissed off about certain things, that's what that song's going to be about. I didn't go in particularly to write the song with any topic in mind. It was just like, if Shane sent me over music, or was listening back to the music, and I was just totally, I don't know if I can swear or not. Can I swear?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, if I was totally fucked off about something that I read, like, which normally wouldn't get to me, that would be kind of like the catalyst, So yeah, like, it's not all bad either. It's just that like, it's more, as I said, more observational bar one song.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that one song though,
it's called Michael. So it's my uncle died during COVID, so that was, I had the lyrics to what would become Michael already written, and it was completely different. It was more in line with the rest of the album kind of thing, and I didn't have them completely finished. But then when he passed away, I was lying on the sofa listening to the music, and something just sparked me that the chorus came to me, and I said, right, I'm going to have to complete rewrite, because this just came out of me in about 20 minutes. I had the song written. So the rest of them kind of, there was a little bit more kind of editorial in the rest of the songs.
Yeah.
But with this one, I just, like, I knew if whatever lyrics were coming to me, they were the most honest. So I wanted to keep them that way.
Right. Yeah. Honest lyrics, baby. Now, something you did mention was, not going into a song with an idea in mind. Does the outcome then of the music surprise you when you're done working on your lyrics?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it does. Um, I I don't like. I'm not a big reader, and I don't really kind of have like a vision for a song when I hear the music straight away. Sometimes I just start writing, and then an idea will kind of formulate, and then I'll kind of work on that a little bit more. Um, so yeah, like I don't go in saying like that music is definitely a song about this. It's just like and it kind of comes more when I'm just like humming the melodies, or doing my kind of like demo vocals, and I like you might kind of it's normally gibberish, and like you might hear something that sounds like a word, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm just gonna write a sentence around this word, and then that might set the kind of tone or the subject matter for the rest of it. But if on the flip side of the coin, if I'm really again like fucked off about something, and I can squeeze that into the context of the song, I probably will.
More to come, but let's go ahead and check in with our beautiful sponsors. Two Madsen is responsible for producing, mixing, and mastering some of the best metal for over the last 20 years. From Meshuggah to The Haunted to Poison Black, Kemper Profiler packs for guitar players, and Easy Drummer expansion packs for programming drums. Two Madsen can take your production to a level previously unheard. Head over to twomadsen.com. That's twomadsen.com. TUEMADSEN. Click contact, fill out the info for your next project, and let Two know that the Rock Metal Podcast sent you. Wormhole Death is a modern record label, publishing, and film production company born in 2008. Getting signed to this label means global distribution, publishing, and marketing with Wormhole Death's roster of global partnerships. Head over to wormholedeath.com. That's wormholedeath.com. Submit your band and let them know the Rock Metal Podcast sent you. How would you define success at this stage of your career?
Well, I think when we kind of put something out, when you put some art out into the world, like I mean, it's if people kind of connect with it, probably more than anything else, So if I was reading a piece about James Hetfield the other day, and it was somebody asked him, "What does that song mean?" And then his response was, "Well, what does it mean to you?" And I think I was like, "Yeah, that's actually probably more eloquent than what my answer would be." But like, that's to me probably the most important thing. Like, if somebody comes up to me and says that song is effing brilliant, I love that chorus. This is like that's to me is probably what makes me feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not looking for kudos, but it's like if somebody kind of connects with it, like if somebody kind of reads the words and then like it connects with them, you said spiritually, if it connects with them, kind of like gives them goosebumps or makes them want to kind of like throw down or whatever, like not throw down, like just like go crazy. Then I think job done for me.
Yeah, very cool. I'll start getting into some questions that I have some time for. One of them is, let's go back to Josh Shroeder. It sounds like you guys have a lot of things, or you anyway, have a lot of things to say about working with him. Goes into the working remotely part of it. You mentioned snagging him as a producer was great. Just take us through something that was, I guess, remarkable for you that you want other musicians to hear. I mean, personally, I'm like, you snagged him. What does that even mean? Or it could be something that he worked with you on your vocals, or something that you changed your life.
Well, firstly, we friends of ours, they're a band from Detroit called Of Virtue, worked with Josh on their last record, the one before that, and the production of it completely blew us away. So we kind of, whenever we kind of got whenever we got into this new album, we kind of said we have to ask Josh if he'll work with us, and we kind of expected a no, because who the hell are these guys, we're not on the same level as any of the other bands that he works with. But he came back and said yes. So firstly, that was life changing for me, and I guess how he kind of brought the songs to life. How he gave them like their, as I said before, their identity. How he just kind of made us sound the best that we could. That that was absolutely incredible. And we were chatting with him kind of back and forth through the process, which was amazing as well. But he just gave us like a lot of advice going forward. Like, I mean, kind of talking about stripping songs down to maybe just an acoustic guitar and writing a song that way, and then adding the building blocks onto that. Like, I mean, the heavier guitars and the heavier vocals and like, synths and all that kind of stuff. So like we never kind of approached the song that way before. But I did a piano song and I sent it off to Shane and he brought it back with the guitars and stuff and it sounds amazing. So like that was a new avenue for us to explore, which I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah. It reminds me of an interview with, and I've just lost his name, Mike something from Social Distortion, which I guess shows my age. But nevertheless, they get together and they write campfire songs on acoustic guitars, and they make sure that they stand on their own two legs as a campfire song, and then they bring in, as he puts it, the Les Pauls and the Marshalls. So
makes sense.
Yeah,
it definitely makes sense, because I think what matters a lot to me is, sorry, with hiccups.
Sure.
Sorry, is that like a song is like a good song is a good song regardless if it's on the acoustic guitar or on like full band, and if you can strip a heavy song back to a guitar or piano and it still has the same effect or vice versa, then it's a good song.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, a song is a good song whether it's on a piano or a guitar or whatever you've got going with it.
You know what I mean?
That's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing we could take away from working with Josh Shroeder, aside from the, how do I want to phrase it? We could say production quality, but that's part of being a good producer, is saying, you know what, I'm going to put one microphone in this room, and if it doesn't work with one microphone, it ain't going to work with 100 microphones. So
yeah, if I was to read into what his advice would be, like, I mean, like, I guess you can interpret it that way for sure. As I said, I think a good song is something that can be kind of transposed in on many platforms or many different orchestrations.
Yeah, wow, very cool. Okay, I think we've asked all of our questions. One other question I kind of have potentially in mind, if you have time, is because you were able to work on your own remotely, if there was any gear that you may have used that kind of surprised you or, was, crucial to, completing the record.
The vocals that I did at home here that was just all demo vocal. Like, we went into another studio, a friend of ours, Paul Finn, we went into his studio and redid all the vocals again properly, but I did get a bit of kit when lockdown came in first. I got a Rode something or other. I'm really bad with gear. The Rode mic, and I got some sort of interface. What's it called? It's a red one.
Focusrite.
Correct them on those. Scarlet something or other. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and that just basically allowed me to use Reaper, which Josh Schroeder uses. So if there's any ideas that we wanted to send to him directly, it was great. It transcribed directly across. But yeah, it was just having a decent microphone and a decent way of capturing my ideas. That was just the most important thing, because I knew. Well, firstly, we didn't know how long lockdown was going to last. We thought it was going to be like a month, maybe 2 months, 6 months, whatever it was. But it turned out to be COVID was nearly 2 years long. Like, and so I'm glad that I invested in the gear, because it's something that I use for demoing all the time now.
What is the number one thing that you would like people listening right now to do? And that could be, 100 jumping jacks. It could be, obviously hitting up a particular social. This is a good place to plug. Listen to the record. This is obviously whatever you want it to be, actually. What's the number one thing you want people listening right now to do?
Give the music a chance. We're a small band. Things like this are kind of the platforms like your podcast kind of get our art or our music out to people that we probably wouldn't get it out to in normal life. So if anyone likes kind of like aggressive alternative metalcore or whatever way you wanted to define it, then just give it a shot. Hopefully you connect with it.
Okay. So I think what you said was share the shit out of this podcast.
Basically, yeah.
I've yet to have somebody say that. That would be so alarmingly refreshing. Share the shit out of this interview. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Give the music a chance. Platforms. I guess, is that what you guys call yourselves, metalcore or whatever?
Probably, because like it doesn't really sound that metalcore-y, but a lot of the bands that we kind of listen to as references would be metalcore bands. So I'd like to say we're not metalcore. I'd like to say we're probably some sort of alternative of it. But yeah, we're probably metalcore.
Okay. Which, of course, is taking on all different shapes and sizes these days.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, it's such a vast kind of genre now. So, yeah, okay, let's say it. We're metalcore. Yeah, let's say it. Sure. Why not?
Sure, core.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me, John. Thank you.
And that's it for this episode of the Rock Metal Podcast. Stay tuned because next week we're going to be chatting with Adam Gontier of Saint Asonia. They've got a new album, a new tour, and Adam chats what's coming up next for Saint Asonia. Go ahead and hit subscribe in your podcast player, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next week.